Ariel Helwani and the new media outlet Uncrowned have added some really big names to their team. Will they be successful? That's what I'm going to talk about in today's video. My name is James Lynch. I'm a little bit dressed up here today. Just did some work for Cage Titans. I'll mention that maybe a little bit later on my channel. But we're here to talk about the big news this week in the media landscape. Ariel Helwani and the Uncrowned team announcing some big additions to their team. I'm going to give my thoughts on that and kind of how I see the future going with this outlet. Big players in the industry. So first and foremost, they had Sean El-Shadi. I know Sean. I've known Sean for a while. Really great guy. I've met him a number of times at events. Editor-in-chief, well-deserved. This is a guy who's been at, obviously, MMA fighting for a long time. He was at The Athletic. Sean is a great hire, someone that is a good anchor to run the ship here. So I think that is an absolutely great hire. The next big name that they hired was Chuck Mendenhall, who covers not only MMA boxing, you've seen him on Morning Combat, he's been at ESPN, he's been at MMA fighting, he's been at The Athletic. And also, I got to say with Chuck, and same thing goes with Sean as well, two of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in the industry. So it's understandable why these two have kind of joined forces. Again, they were at MMA fighting for a while together, along with Ariel Helwani. So no brainer there. Of course, Chuck also doing some work for Spotify and The Ringer, doing some work there as well. So that's how, obviously, if you're going to assemble a team, you want people that you know and trust and have been sort of mainstays in the industry. So those are two really big names as well. They've also added Ben Fowlkes as well, who was already working for Yahoo. If you remember, he did that interview with Dana White, a couple of weeks back. But Ben's a veteran of the game. I don't know if people remember, Ben actually used to work with Ariel in MMA fighting way back in the day before Ben went to MMA Junkie and then The Athletic. And then he's sort of been doing his own thing lately before joining Yahoo earlier this year. So Ben's a good hire. Again, another veteran of the game. They're like the equivalent of having like a long-standing veteran in a sport. I'm just trying to think of an example, like a Steve Young or Joe Montana in the NFL. This is kind of the equivalent of adding these sort of guys in the industry. Well-established, very talented. So these are three really big hires. I don't know much about this Keith Idek. I hope I'm saying that right, boxing guy. I didn't know much about him before joining, but again, I'm sure there were a lot of people they considered. And I've seen this Cameron Hawkins guy, who I think goes by Seahawk on Twitter. Seen a little bit of stuff there. This is pro wrestling, by the way. They should probably put that in the press release because I had some people say, "Oh, are they covering like NCAA wrestling?" No, it's pro wrestling here. But from what I can tell, just from the feedback from both these guys, seems like very good hires there. So again, assembling the dream team. As Ariel calls it, this is a really, really strong, team that they put together. And I think on the surface, this looks like a lot of success coming forward. So there's that. Ariel then adds another note here, which I think is interesting, meaning that we could see some more names come through here. I'm going to read this just very quickly. He says, when my contracts were coming up, I had a very clear vision of what I wanted to do next. And a massive part of that vision was to bring an army with me. That's what I've always wanted. So something Ariel sort of reveals here is that he had, it's understandable. He had other considerations other than Yahoo at this point. So it seems like Ariel kind of came, when people are kind of talking to him, Ariel's like, look, this is the vision I have. Do we line up? And I guess Yahoo was, made the best offer, had the best vision or whatever. And they've sort of come together. So good on Ariel for sticking to his guns and saying, this is what I want to achieve and what I want to do. Talks about the, management team here with Yahoo. Could just be about me, and it isn't. Off the jump, we're creating close to 20 new jobs in media. So I found that really interesting. So while these names are hired here, more names are going to be coming. Are these names going to be coming from MMA Fighting or MMA Junkie? We'll have to see who ends up going into the fold. I'm curious about that. And remember, this will be boxing, wrestling, and MMA. So people thinking that's 20 new MMA jobs, it's not. It's probably going to be, could be, 10 MMA guys and, 5 boxing guys and 5 pro wrestling guys. So I'm curious to see who they bring on in the next couple of weeks. The vibes couldn't be better. Amazing people. I will agree with them there. I don't know Ben that well, but Chuck and Sean, they're two of the guys in the industry, honestly. How media gets a lot of crap? They're two of the guys you don't really see anyone complain about at all because they're just so good at what they do and they're such good people. So definitely agree with Ariel there. Okay. And then what else was I going to say? And then the other thing I wanted to mention is they're doing their big event today, which they announced the lineup: Chael Sonnen, Jim Lampley, Eric Nixick, Casey O'Neill, Roy Jones Jr. So a bit of everything. And this is kind of what I think Ariel's always wanted. We sort of saw that on the tail end of the MMA hour, which was not just MMA, doing boxing, wrestling, and other sports as well, which I think is a good mix, because then you have more opportunities to get bigger guests. And let's be honest, there's some boxing fighters that are bigger than some MMA fighters. There's some pro wrestlers that people are more care about that way. The only downside to that is, and we'll talk about that later, and some of the challenges I see is that not everyone is a boxing and wrestling fan. So while they're probably going to bring in new viewers, they're probably going to lose some viewers that just want to watch the MMA stuff. So there's two sides of it as well. So let's talk about the future and my prediction on this. And again, I come from the traditional media side, and I also come from the YouTube side as well. So I kind of look at this both different ways. And if you guys remember, I did a video, a few weeks ago talking about how the industry is changing. And one of the things I wanted to kind of double down on that video that maybe I didn't explain properly is that obviously these big outlets like Your Fighting and Junkie, while things are certainly changing, I don't think any of these outlets are dying. You know what I mean? I want to be clear about that. I mean, obviously they're not just making money from YouTube. Their primary source of income is from the website and ads and all that different stuff. So I did, if it came across in this video, like I was saying, like these outlets like Junkie or Fighting are not doing well, that's not accurate. I'm just saying things are changing. They might have to adapt going forward. So let's talk about why I think they're going to be successful. And I'm going to talk about some of the challenges I think. So just looking at this team here again. So first and foremost, Yahoo's a huge brand. I saw some people in the comments being like, this is a step down. Like, you're just not paying attention. Yahoo has been a mainstream outlet forever. I mean, I remember doing one of my first hockey pools ever was through Yahoo. It's been a long-standing sports outlet for a very long time that has continued to grow. This is a very, very, very big deal. So, it's a big brand. It's potential. There's also potential here for the UFC to set up interviews with Ariel. I hear a lot of people saying Ariel's banned and all this different stuff. As far as I know, Ariel's not banned from covering UFC events. Is Dana White the biggest fan of him? No. I think that's probably still the same, but there could be potential for the UFC to set up interviews now with Yahoo because Yahoo is a bigger brand than Vox Media, in my opinion. So there could be potential for that, meaning that Ariel could get even bigger guests than he was already getting. So I think there's that side of it as well. I do wonder as well if, clients of Dominance MMA will be seen more frequently on here because, that manager, I'm not going to mention on here, he might not be able to stop fighters from going on now. The UFC might be sort of taking the reins here and setting things up. So I think there's a lot of positives there where this could lead to even better guests for Ariel going forward with Yahoo being such a big brand. And remember, Yahoo also did an interview with Dana White a few weeks ago. Dana White doesn't do interviews with everyone. So I think even before Ariel joined, Yahoo is already a big outlet. I think the UFC sees that. They see the exposure. That could be a game changer for them as well. The other thing is, Ariel's the biggest name in MMA. A lot of people like to crap on him. A lot of people like to say different things. You can love him, you can hate him, but Ariel is the biggest well-known media member in the sport. I see people saying Nina Drama's bigger. Yeah, Nina's a big deal too now, okay? But Ariel has that history of being the first guy to be the first real big media member here. 1 million followers on Twitter. There's nobody that comes close to that in the MMA media space. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny the numbers. Ariel is one of the most immensely popular people from a media side, whether you like him or don't like him. The other key thing here with Ariel and why I think they'll be successful is that he owns everything. It's not a Yahoo thing. Like Yahoo's essentially, in my opinion, just paying for having their branding on Ariel's videos, but he owns all the content. All the content for Ariel's stuff will be on his YouTube channel. Now, obviously, the stuff that Chuck and Sean and these other guys are going to do, Ben, it'll be written stuff that's going to be on their website. So Yahoo obviously gets a lot of that out, but as far as video and far as everything, Ariel owns the content. And like I said in my last video, Ariel, if he ever wants to leave the sport, he can just go and do a behind the scenes thing and he still owns everything and it's his outlet. Like he owns Uncrowned. So that's like kind of a big deal there. The other thing I mentioned there, Chuck, Sean, Ben, these are guys, and I'm not going to talk too much about Keith and Cameron here because I don't really know them that well, but I do know these three gentlemen like very well in terms of how they've been in the industry. These are people that have been in the industry for a long time. I've said this time and time again. It is so hard to stay in this industry and make money in this industry. It's very, very difficult. There's people that have come and gone throughout the years. I could give you a whole list of people that were in this industry that aren't in there now. They're still here. And that speaks volumes to the talent level and how good they are. So I think, again, having these three guys, it's almost a guarantee that it's going to be successful that way. Another thing that I mentioned there was the meet and greet. I think this should be more of a regular thing. If they're going to, I don't know if they're charging people for this, but I think if they do, that could be another financial incentive for the, outlet to grow. And it gives people to be more interactive. One of the things I really loved with MMA Junkie back in the day is they used to have their radio show at the Mandalay Bay. People would sit out there and watch the radio show. I think we need to see more of that. I think the more interaction you can have at public events, I think is a huge win for the Yahoo and the Uncrowned brand. So again, I think that's another reason why they will be really successful is because, again, you have a lot of people that these are all big names in the industry and doing these meet and greets. It's a great way. I mean, I know a lot of fans who are like really excited to go see this stuff while they're in Vegas seeing the card. So those are the reasons I think they'll be successful. Again, you got Ariel Helwani. Ariel's been successful at everything that he's done. It's going to be a real long-term vision. And again, those other names I mentioned, they've been in the industry for a while as well. So I think those are some big wins. Okay, let's talk about some of the challenges I see going forward. And this doesn't mean I don't think they'll be successful. I do think there are things that are worth noting when looking at this as well. So one of the things I mentioned in this video here was that video content is changing rapidly. I will argue this and make this point. I think that fans are less and less interested in interviews. And I'm going to do a video on this later, but because of all the content thieves out there, the people that are taking clips from other interviews, from news, MMA YouTube news, channels that are stealing content and putting everything together into like a news video. That's also hurting people who do interviews. So Ariel's focus is the same thing he was doing before, which is big interviews. I think it can still be successful, but I think the challenges are these content thieves that are stealing content. People aren't going to watch the full interview. And again, I'm going to do a whole video on this later and talk about how I think that's changing the industry. But, if Ariel's plan is to continue doing what he's doing, you did see a bit of a dip in numbers when he was towards the end of the MMA hour, as opposed to doing, the hate content, which obviously he'd never do, but that seems to be more of the selling point now for people viewing stuff on YouTube. So just keep that in mind, as well as that video content is changing rapidly, and they didn't hire any video guys here. Like they didn't hire any, like they could have hired like an MMA on point to come and do like, cinematic or like, documentary side videos for them. I think that's something that I do think could be a challenge that they haven't addressed that. Sean, Chuck, and Ben are mainly writers. And that kind of brings me to my next point. These three gentlemen were at The Athletic. The Athletic MMA doesn't exist anymore. And I kind of predicted this happening, and it's not because of any of them. I'm not blaming them at all, but I think if you look at the average MMA fan, a lot of them don't read. A lot of them want video content. A lot of them watch the social media stuff. A lot of them are on social media getting their news. That's why there's so much fake news out there, and people believe it because that's how they're getting their news, or that's what they're into. Chuck and Sean are two of the best long form writers of all time ever in this industry. I really enjoy the work that they do, but I don't think there's an audience much for that anymore. Maybe there is. Maybe I'm going to be wrong about this, but I think that's going to be a big challenge going forward, is getting fans to sit down and read like a long piece. I would assume that's why both of them were brought on. Obviously, Sean's doing more of like an editor role, but I think with Chuck, yeah, he'll be doing some news, but I think a lot of what he'll be doing too, I would assume, and again, I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume Chuck's going to start doing some long form stuff again. That didn't translate well at The Athletic, but a big problem with The Athletic was it was a paid site. People aren't going to pay to read long form news. They're just not. That's not the average MMA fan. With this, at least it'll be free, but I'm curious to see if that's something that's going to work out. Because again, we had people doing, free long form content, say at Bloody Elbow, and eventually Bloody Elbow got sold and other things there. So I just, again, I'm not saying it's not going to be successful. I'm just saying that like that could be a challenge going forward, because I don't think a lot of MMA fans now like reading. If we're being honest, they like a lot of video content there as well. One thing I think would have been a good move, and maybe they still plan to do this, is take the brains of Sean and Chuck with long form stuff and turn that into video content. Turn that into like a documentary style thing. I think that could be successful. Because if you look at the success of MMA On Point, that's pretty much what they do. There's other channels that do sort of that cinematic documentary style stuff on the video side of things. I think that could be more lucrative and more successful. Granted, it takes more resources, but I think that could be a little bit more successful on the video side of things, as opposed to putting that on paper and making it as a long form thing. That's just my opinion. I might be wrong about that, but that's kind of how I see things going forward. So that's just, again, something that I could see being a challenge, is they didn't really bring any video guys on. And I think a lot of the content, how people are consuming it now in this industry, is really video related. Again, I can't speak to Keith or Cameron here with the boxing and wrestling stuff. But I can't speak to the MMA side of things. And I think even the people that are going to read this stuff, maybe the older fans, like I'm going to read stuff that Chuck writes, or I'm going to read the stuff that Sean puts out or Ben puts out. I'll read those articles, but I don't think that's the main fan base right now. I think a lot of the fans are the video content guys and taking stuff in. Granted, they will get new audience members to MMA just because they're on the Yahoo platform, right? Like I guarantee you there's someone who's like a big basketball fan or big football fan that, regularly sees Yahoo, and now they're going to see these stories pop up. They're going to gain new fans from that. However, I think there's also going to be MMA fans that aren't going to be tuning into this stuff because they don't want to read. And that's not saying that MMA fans are dumb and they can't read or anything like that. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm just saying I look at what people are consuming now, and a lot of it is video content, and I just don't see a lot of strong video stuff here. So that's something I think that maybe is neglected and could be a challenge there, but we'll have to see sort of how it unfolds. Again, Ariel will always be successful doing his interviews, but like I said in this last video here, I don't think people are into interviews as much. I think the numbers are down. I was talking to someone else the other day who does a lot of big interviews in the MMA space. He even mentioned to me, he's like, I don't get it, man. My interview numbers are down. And I was telling him, I think people just aren't into interviews as much as they used to be. So that's something worth noting. So to conclude this video here, to kind of make my last point, I think they will be successful, but I do see challenges along the way. I think, again, I'm curious to see what the video stuff, how the numbers are going to look. Again, they've already got, Ariel's already got, how many subscribers does he have on his YouTube channel already? I think he has a ton, if I'm not mistaken. And that's only going to grow. And I think more people have subscribed over the last couple of weeks. So Ariel's got 160,000 subscribers on his channel. That number is going to get a lot bigger. I would not be surprised if they're hitting 3,000, 400,000, 500,000 here soon, whether it's the end of the year, early next year. I could see that happening as well. I wish them success. I think the more successful outlets in this industry means more jobs, more people are getting to cover the sport. I hope they do well. I don't want anyone, I make these videos because I think it's worth talking about what's going on in the industry. No one's really doing it. You're not going to get the content creators to do that because they're too concerned about what fighters say and bash them and all this different stuff. And then on the media side of things, they're not really doing a lot of this stuff. They're talking about the usual fight run of the mill stuff. But I enjoy talking about this because I'm still in the industry. I'm a journalist. I'm a reporter. So this stuff is all very appealing to me. So that's kind of why I cover it. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you think Uncrowned will be successful as an outlet? And just another reminder, it's not just MMA. It's going to be boxing. It's going to be pro wrestling. There's going to be a lot of things going forward. How do you think they'll do? Will you be watching their content? Are you going to be watching Ariel's show regularly? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious to hear about this, guys. And let me know if there's any other videos you guys want me to do in the industry. Like I said, my next video that's going to come out is going to be talking about how a lot of the social media accounts and YouTube accounts are taking content and how that's changing the industry. And that's going to be sort of my next video. So keep an eye out for that. I'll get that done here soon. But in the meantime, my name is James Lynch. Again, I got all dressed up today for you guys. So I appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell. I'll see you guys soon. And thanks so much for watching.